Just this past Wednesday, the developers of ᴍᴏ1 and ZS2 hosted an AMA over on Reddit, answering a lot of the community's burning questions, not only about ZS2, but also about ᴍᴏ1. Questions like, will ᴍᴏ1 continue to get support, even with the development of ZS2? You guys really came out swinging with the questions. There are some that go into some more detail about features we know that are coming to ZS2, like co-op. So today I'm going to go over the AMA with you. I've highlighted some questions that I think are particularly interesting, and hopefully we can get some more juicy details about ZS2 and ZS1 going forward. Okay, there's lots of really good questions in this AMA. I'm going to try and move along as quickly as I can because I don't want this video to be like an hour long. Starting off with question number 1, if we join a player's world, are we making new characters or are we carrying over the same character from our world? ᴍᴏ is one of the ZS2 devs. You will be able to join with your own character and carry it over, and you'll also be able to create a new one too if you want to separate things. I really like to see that. You will still be able to progress with your main character if you want. We'll come back to that later. There's some more questions about the co-op and progression stuff later on. Are players tied at the hip, forced to be on the same screen, or have to wait for other players to go into a building, or can we all go to different corners of a map when we spawn in? No ropes or chains. You'll be able to explore the map together or separate. If someone dies, they'll be able to spectate the others until there's no one left in the map or everyone else has extracted. The only limitation is the deployment phase, so you'll all have to pick a map, but once there, you can enter and exit buildings and go anywhere, even follow separate objectives or split to optimize a hunt. And then there's a follow-up question. If your buddy dies, are you able to go and try and revive them somehow for a brief period at least? Yes, they will be in a down state, down but not out, and they're going to be in that state for a brief amount of time until you can get to them or once they finally die. And then there's another follow-up question down here. Will you be able to see where your mates are when they're off screen, like some sort of marker? And yes, you will be able to see them. They'll have markers in the map on the PDA. Here's a question about AI. Will there be AI companions in the game? They basically say they have no plans for AI companions at the moment. The game is built to be playable in solo or in a squad with your friends. It is something they're thinking about though, so maybe, I don't know, it sounds like kind of a soft maybe they'll implement something like that in the future. Think about like the companions you can get in ᴍᴏ mod for ZS1. That would be really cool actually if you could bring out some AI companions like in that mod. Will the settings be as customizable as in the first game, like losing all equipment on death and enemy health values? So ZS1 has a lot of options. There's a lot of toggles, a lot of sliders for you to really personalize the experience to you. And then ᴍᴏ says, absolutely, we want to keep the same versatility of the original. In multiplayer though, the game's host decides the settings for that save. So whoever's hosting the game is gonna be the one to decide what difficulty settings everybody's playing on. To join someone, you'll have to either share a match code or use a friend list, a Steam friends list. We may change things along the way depending on also what the community prefers, but so far this is what we have in place. When are we getting early access? This is a big one, and is the game coming to next-gen consoles such as PS5? They're in pre-alpha mode right now. They say they want to provide a multiplayer demo as soon as we can, definitely before an early access release, not giving any like solid dates on early access just yet. And about the consoles, I think only Xbox allows for early access releases, but we have experience on developing for consoles, and we'll be looking at the platforms it makes sense to have the game on for the 1.0 release. So not really for early access. They're thinking about it for 1.0 though. So this is a really interesting question about maps and the buildings and indoor spaces themselves within the maps. How big will the maps be compared to the first game? They're saying like about the same size, but the houses and the buildings will be actual like physical spaces, but instead of like opening a door and then teleporting to a separate like play area like we do in ZS1, buildings and houses are going to be actually like playable areas inside the map, you know what I mean? So like you're going to physically travel from outside to inside the house, just like in any other game. And this means that you will also be able to like enemies will be able to chase you inside, and you're no longer safe just by going inside of a house and basically teleporting out of the map into another indoor play area. It's all connected and enemies will be able to follow you. Kind of scary. I know I would definitely use that strategy a lot, especially when I was fighting a boss. Like if I was at the train station fighting Oral and his guards and stuff, I would run into one of those sheds to take cover and like heal and reload and all that stuff. Won't be able to do that as easily in ZS2. Do you intend to add all the previous game's mutants, and do you intend to add new ones? And the answer is basically yes. We're going to see all the mutants from the previous game, and they're working on some new ones. There's another question here about early access that we already answered that one. They're planning on doing a demo before the early access release. Will you keep the same early access structure of building around the community? And they confirm yes, they plan on still listening to the community and taking feedback, which we love to see. How many maps are we planning to release by 1.0? By 1.0, they're planning on having more maps than the original game, and they're taking particular focus on like indoor areas and making those bigger and more detailed, which is really cool. 3 or 4 player cap. This is actually going to be 4 players instead of 3. I got this wrong in my videos when I made them before. When I made those videos, the Steam store page wasn't up yet, and they were showing 3 players and all like the promo material, the trailer and the art and stuff. So I assumed it was going to be 3. It's actually going to be 4, so that's really nice. Are you planning on adding proximity chat for co-op? Yes, proximity will be a setting, or maybe it'll be automatically switched to a radio style filter in mono if you're far away. We're still playing with it, but I know lots of people want proximity chat and not just VoIP, so yes. Next question, I was just wondering if the game will feel lesser if you don't participate in the co-op. Answer, we definitely hope to deliver on both sides. For this reason, we're actually expanding on the narrative, story, and lore. So if anything, we hope the game to be an even better solo experience than the original. Think of it as a single player game with co-op rather than completely for co-op play. We think most people, most of the time, will still want to play solo. Will there be text chat for co-op? We haven't implemented it yet, but I think it makes sense and it's on my radar. Will players be able to trade items within the base, or will we need to go in raid and drop stuff kind of tactic, kind of like in Tarkov? You will be able to see each other in the bunker, and we can trade when we're in the base. That's really cool. So we get a little bit of info here about explosives and gadgets, but then also relics too. What can we expect for extra equipment options like grenades and night vision? Explosives will have some more types. There will be a mix of cool gadgets too, but most importantly, we're adding relics to the game. These are basically going to be artifacts from Stalker. They'll grant some spectacular passive and active abilities, but can also cause some really bad stuff if abused. Kind of scary. Would relics be more like Stalker or Quasimorph for active effects? And they say more like Quasimorph, but will also have passive ones that trigger if something happens around you. Kind of interesting. Will quests be shared progression, or does each player have to manually do the same quest even if they're in the same world? As you can drop in and drop out at any moment from a server, progression is not necessarily shared, but if you have the same quest as someone else, for example, destroy objective X, that will complete for everybody. Same for quests where you need to kill X number of enemies, for example. So this means you won't need to do the exact same objective like multiple times for everybody else. Like, okay, you killed your set number of enemies. Okay, now player number 2 needs to do the same thing. We need to find more of them. And then player 3, oh, you have that objective too. We need to find even more of them so you can do the same quest. By the way this is worded, it seems like you'll just have to complete it one time and it'll complete for anybody in the party who has that quest. This next one is kind of asking about the hideout and how those are going to be integrated into co-op. Will each player have their own separate hideout with their own separate upgrades that could be shared if players are joining into a world? Yes, each player will have their own separate hideout. Essentially, think of it as rooms that get added to the main bunker. You have your own space from your save game that follows your character when you join, but you also have common areas. If a friend joins my server, they essentially come with their character and their own base. So yeah, it seems like the bar or whatever where all the traders are. My phone just went off, sorry. And then everybody's going to have like their own separate room where basically their hideout, the way they've built it so far, is going to come with them into the co-op instance or the multiplayer instance. What if one player has a module in their hideout that another person doesn't have? That means like you could potentially share materials, like crafting materials, give it to them so they can craft some like rare ammo and bring it back, and you guys can trade items and make sure that everybody has the good ammo when you go in on a raid. That's kind of cool. How much effort are you going to put into Zero Sievert? Are you going to focus mainly on developing the new game or not? This one was answered by Luca. He's the developer of Zero Sievert 1. Zero Sievert 1 is not being abandoned. I'll continue working on updates and new content for ZS1 as I have been over the past years. Zero Sievert 2 is being developed by Underdog Studios, whose main focus will be the sequel. The collaboration between me and Underdog goes both ways. They can support me with ZS1 when needed, and I can support them with ZS2 to help make sure the sequel stays true to the identity of Zero Sievert. So good news for ZS1 fans. I know there's a lot of you out there, especially in terms of like the art style and the graphics and stuff. It's not being abandoned. They will still be putting out patches. Still waiting on those ammo stacks. I can't wait till that comes. Next question, will looting be shared or for each player's instance? Loot is shared as we think it feels more immersive, but the game will balance things a little depending on number of players. So this means that instead of spawning a new instance of loot for every single player so that every player gets the loot that an enemy drops, so like say you kill a ghoul and it has 1 meat and 1 tentacle, it's only going to have 1 meat and 1 tentacle for like whoever to pick up. It's not going to spawn 1 meat and 1 tentacle for every player to potentially pick up so that everybody gets the loot. It's like 1 instance of loot and we will have to fight over it in co-op. Will ZS2 work better on handhelds versus one? Steam Deck and similar are a focus from ours from the start on this one. That's really nice to hear. Okay, this next question goes a little bit into the weeds of modding. Try not to fall asleep if you're not a modder. But the homepage for Zero Sievert 2 talks about modding tools. Can we get a tease of what those might entail? The game uses Unreal Engine, even if we're stripping it down to the bone to make it run well even on low specs. This means that we'll distribute the entire game editor and people will be able to make their own blueprints, plugins, etc. and extend pretty much anything. And even the logic of the quests, NPCs, and enemies map generation. Holy shit, you're going to be able to make a lot of changes. There's some additional learning curve when dealing with multiplayer, but most objects will already be fully networked and will provide documentation. So that all sounds like good news for the modding community. They're going to provide, just like with ZS1 actually, remember they came out with an update where they built basically an entire guide for modders on how to, like basics on how to mod the game. It looks like they're going to be doing the same thing with ZS2. Love to see that. Next question, we have somebody here asking for a couple of specific guns, a G3 and an FN57, and then Peppo responds by saying, we don't have a final list yet, no final list of the guns, but all of the guns from ZS1 are going to make a comeback. So everything that we've got so far will be coming back in ZS2. Will there be any weapons other than the standard guns, like a flamethrower or melee weapons? Can't promise specifics yet, but I do like flamethrowers in games. There's a flamethrower. They're making a flamethrower guaranteed. Pricing. I get a lot of questions about pricing for ZS2. That's not something we know yet. Will the price be similar to the first game? That's one for the game's publisher, but I think it will be similar, yes. It will be in line with other indie games and games in that genre. So by that, I'm guessing the game's going to be between like $20 and $30. Somewhere in that range. Here's a couple of good questions. When can we expect a new update for Sievert? The hype building up has been insane. God, I really need my ammo stacks, man. I want to know when that is too. And will Sievert 2 have the ability to be modded even with co-op? Will mods persist even in co-op? Apparently the update's coming soon. No specifics on that. And yes, people will need to install the same mods for the ones being used in co-op. So the mods, any mods you install will carry over into co-op, but your friends, anybody else joining you will need to have the same mods installed for it to work. Couch co-op, please. It's sadly not something super simple to add, as it would have to involve a split screen mode, but after release, I mean, it's on their list. Maybe that sounds like another soft maybe too. Couch co-op could be, I don't know. Any chance of Sievert 2 being compatible on Mac OS? I can't confirm a native port at this stage, but if the game performs badly or is not fully playable on it, we'll definitely look at it. Believe it or not, some people game on their Macs, so having a Mac port would be kind of cool. This is a really big one. Was actually an issue in ZS1. Will you be supporting widescreen resolutions at this time, at least 21:9? Yes, there were. I remember there was a period of time in ZS1, I think before early access, and even going into early access, I think, where the game didn't properly support 21:9, and there was some like squashing or aspect ratio issues with it. ZS2 will have native support for those ultra widescreen resolutions at launch. Great, I'd love to hear that. Do you have any plans to add a PvP mode and weapon attachment system so we can change them in raids or something like that? No, we don't plan to add PvP, as we think most of the ZS community quite enjoys the more relaxed style of the game. But that said, I'm sure people will mod that in. And yes, we've been thinking about ways to allow you to swap weapon mods, maybe via perk skill to unlock too. So the weapon attachment thing, being able to mod those or being able to put certain attachments on and off of your guns was added to Sievert, but it was added like kind of later on. This answer is a little bit vague. It seems like maybe they're connecting it to a perk or skill. You won't just be able to do it right off the bat. Kind of interesting. We'll have to see how that shakes out. Will the difficulty scale solo versus co-op? Yes, the difficulty is going to scale. And then there's another question in here about leaderboards, like comparing your stats maybe at the end of the raid to your squad. And they're thinking like enemies killed, value extracted, those kinds of things. It seems like that's not really a feature on their radar right now, but who knows? Maybe they'll add that at some point in the future. I think that would be cool, kind of comparing your stats and seeing who got the most XP, who got the most money at the end of a raid. That might be kind of interesting. Add a little bit of a like friendly competitive atmosphere to the co-op. Here's another question about maps, kind of confirming the number that's expected at 1.0. Is the intention to have the same amount of maps as the first game or more than the first? So they're planning on having more maps than the original game. They're not going to put all of them out at first, like during early access, but at 1.0, they're going to have more. There's going to be more maps at ZS2 1.0 than at ZS1 1.0. And then there's kind of a second part to this question. Can you tell us what biomes are planned? We have a snowy, mountainous one. We already showed, they showed that one in the trailer. We've been trying out some wetland looking biomes. We have a dry and rocky place with a big military camp too, and that's all they can really say for now. Here's somebody else asking about console support, and they do go on to say, talk a little bit about Steam Deck. We'll explore potential different platforms, especially after launch, and we're definitely hoping to have ZS2 working on Steam Deck, which would mean controller support. So console still kind of up in the air, but Steam Deck, they're looking at Steam Deck and definitely controller support on PC, so that's really nice. Are there plans for continuity of plot and characters from ZS1 to ZS2? ZS2 is going to be set several years after ZS1, and you'll definitely see some familiar faces. So apparently the barman that we see in the trailer is going to be the same dude, the same guy from ZS1, and some other characters are going to be returning too. And this question gets to something I hear a lot in the Zero Sievert community is like, why are we getting a sequel so soon? Why aren't you guys working more on ZS1 and bringing more features to that? Because we really like it. We really like ZS1 and its style and what it offers, and we would love to see more of these kinds of features added. How will the development of ZS2 affect ZS1? Zero Sievert is still very much unpolished and needs a lot of work. I fear that Zero Sievert will get left behind after you deem it to be complete, like how it was released into 1.0. It's in its very unfinished state. And Cabo gives a very comprehensive answer to this. I understand the concern, but ZS2 doesn't mean ZS1 will be left behind. ZS1 will continue to be developed by me, as it has been for the past years. ZS1 was originally started by me as a hobby project, so it was born with some tech debt from the start. We've improved it a lot over the years, but some issues are difficult to fully solve without rebuilding major parts of the game. That's one of the reasons ZS2 exists. Sometimes the smartest long-term solution is to start again with a stronger foundation, using everything we learned from ZS1. ZS2 is developed by Underdog while I continue to work on ZS1. Our collaboration goes both ways. They can help me on ZS1 and I can help them on ZS2. So this is talking about like the foundational problems that are kind of built into ZS1. A lot of the cool features that we may want for that game can't really be fully realized just because of the way the game was developed from the start. It's like the foundation on your house, or like a load-bearing wall, right? Sometimes you can't just knock down a wall and put an extension on your house. You have to think about like the load-bearing wall, and maybe there's like some plumbing and electrical that needs to be redone. So kind of take that how you will. I mean, they're still going to support ZS1, which is nice, but like bigger, more sweeping changes, like big feature additions for ZS1 may not really be a thing, just purely because of that and how it was like built in the first place. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I really hope it wasn't too long of a video, but there are a lot of really good questions being asked by the community, and there's definitely some good information in here, some cool new details about like co-op and how the loot is distributed, how that's going to look when like joining a lobby of your friends, and like a lot of really good information here. I'm even more excited for ZS2 now. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll talk to you in the next video.